Okay, so first of all, my small group knows this about me. I have no concept of time. So we could be here for 20 minutes or 3 hours unless y'all watch your watches for me because I'll forget to look at mine. So when it gets to be about 10:20, y'all kind of wave at me. And then when it's about 10:35 or so, wave at me again. Okay? So I have cancer, if you haven't already heard. And we'll talk about that, and I'll give you, the update on kind of how things are going. But the more important thing is to talk about how incredible God is today, because He is so, so good. And in order to really understand how good He is, y'all kind of need to know the whole story, not just the last 3 weeks, but the whole thing. So I grew up, for the most part, in a smaller town called Abilene, Texas, and I'm very, very blessed because I was born into a Christian home. My dad is a minister. He has always been in charge of family life ministry, or he and my mom are both licensed professional counselors, and so the counseling ministry through the church is what he's always directed. And so I grew up going to church every time the doors were open, which back then it was twice on Sundays, Sunday morning, Sunday night. Wednesday night, eat the burger in the fellowship hall and then go the stuff after. Some of y'all are nodding and know what I'm talking about, okay? And then, camp, discipleship now weekend, all that stuff. And all my really good friends also grew up going to church. And so very rich heritage. I'm so, so blessed that way. After high school, I went to Baylor, Sickle Bears. And while I was there, I spent 1 year living with a friend of mine from home, Allison. And she and I had been friends always. Her dad was my pediatrician. We lived down the street from each other. We went to the same school, same church. She was a year ahead of me, but we'd always been friends. But that year that we lived together, we really became best friends and have been ever since and still are. And she's just been a real important part of my life. And I was at Baylor for a couple years, and then the way that the program is at Baylor, when you want to do nursing like I did, you move to Dallas to go to nursing school for your junior and senior year. So headed to Dallas, was in nursing school, and while I was there, I got a call from my family that my mom had found a lump in her breast. And so, of course, went home, and turns out that was cancer. And she went through surgery and chemo and radiation, the whole 9 yards. And because my parents have always been, in the helping professions, and because my parents by nature are just the most nurturing, wonderful people, they had given their lives for many, many years. And all of a sudden it started coming back to her and to them with the support. And it was overwhelming. I remember I tried to keep, just the 2 days she was in the hospital with surgery, I tried to keep a log of all the phone calls, and I had to stop at 75 because I couldn't keep up anymore. And I call it her cancer card basket. It was this huge basket just for cards, not through the whole time, just like the first week or two. And it was packed. So it was just incredible to see the church minister to my sweet family, and just the peace that we felt, and how it was, it's a tragic time, but it was also a time of great blessing. And while she was in the hospital, her primary care doctor, who was also a member of our church, came to visit her, and I was there in the room with her, and he pulled me out in the hallway, and he said, "Now, Meredith, I want you to start getting mammograms when you are 35. You are not going to wait until you're 40, like they recommend for most women. You're going to start at age 35. And that just really, really stuck in my head. He planted that, but it stuck. So Mom went on to be just fine, went through all her treatment. She's still, many of y'all have met her. She's been here a couple times and will continue to be. She's an incredibly strong woman, and she's doing great. So I went on living my life, the single life, and one of the things that I did, because I knew that, having this blessed time of singlehood, depending on how at peace y'all are with calling it a blessed time, but anyway, one of the things that I wanted to do, special time, yes, was to make the most of it, and so I went to grad school, and at North Texas in Denton, and got a master's degree in counseling, just like my parents, grew up to be just like Mommy and Daddy, and specifically focused on play therapy and young kids, and which I have always loved kids. They are my passion. They're the song in my heart, is what Dad calls it. So, just really enjoyed doing that, and went on to, I've always worked in pediatrics and different hospitals, and got to do some work at a children's hospital with kids who are going through a lot of medical kind of traumatic things, and work with really young kids on how to play their way through that because they don't know how to talk about it because they don't have the language yet. So life's just kind of trucking along. Then about 4 years ago, through many, many prayers and many, many tears, made the decision to move down here to Houston. My best friend and her husband were here in the Woodlands, and my brother and new bride of his were here. And they had kind of been teasing me about coming to move here, but that wasn't something I was looking to do, but God just sort of, directed me that way through some circumstances. And it was a huge leap of faith because I did not have a job lined up, and that is not like me to just, I'm unemployed. That's not the way I roll. That's not the way I do things. And my house in Arlington that I'd had for a few years was for sale, and hadn't sold yet. And so I came down here with, the U-Haul, and didn't know where I was going to live for sure, didn't have a job, my house hadn't sold. I mean, this was big, big step of faith, huge. But, believed that God was going to direct me through it. And my sweet friend, in her generosity, said, oh, we have this big 2-story house, we're not using all the space, you can come stay with us for a couple months, while you wait for your house to sell. She didn't know what was about to come. None of us did. So I moved in with them, and, when you are obedient to God, and when, He calls you to do something that really takes a lot of faith, then what's supposed to happen is He's supposed to bless it abundantly, right? And you come and you find this awesome job, and you find just the right place to live, and the cool church with all the friends, and then, a month, 2 months, 3 months later, you get to say, God's so cool, look how faithful He is, and, all these wonderful things that happened. Yeah, that's not the story that I'm going to tell. That's not always the way things go, because that's not the world we live in. So I came down here, living with my friends, and start interviewing for jobs. And I'm the kind of person, every job I'd ever interviewed for in my life, I got it, and usually on the spot, because I always made sure it was a good fit for me. I was well qualified. It was an obvious choice. Started going on a lot of interviews and getting rejected a lot for things that I was overqualified for. And, left those interviews thinking, do you know who I am? Do you know what I'm capable of? I mean, has anyone informed you? And just really, was thinking, okay, Lord, what is going on? Did I not hear you right? I was so certain you told me to come down here, but things just aren't looking good right now. What's the deal? The house still wasn't selling because at that time the market had come down in real estate, and in the area of North Texas where I was the lowest it had been in decades. So it really wasn't looking too good. So finally, I get a job. Things are going to turn around, right? Ha, 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 ha. No, they're not. The job I was at for exactly 5 months. It was at a psychiatric hospital as charge nurse on the child and adolescent unit. And it was the hardest thing up until now, I guess. Hardest thing I've ever done. That'll change. But and I won't go into all of the reasons why, but I went home in tears 90% of the time. It was really, really, really challenging. So I'm still living with my friends. House still hasn't sold. Now, it seemed like it started to make a little bit of sense of why God, because I kept saying to Allison, I know God has a plan. I just have no clue what it is. I know He has a purpose, because He always does, but it really doesn't make sense to me right now. I don't understand how this all adds up. Well, we found out not long after I'd been there that Allison was pregnant again, because they had a 9-month-old baby girl, Katie, when I moved in, and then she was pregnant again. And with her second pregnancy, had horrible morning sickness that lasted all day, and she would be on the couch, get up for 2 seconds, vomit, and be back on the couch. So imagine trying to care for a 9-month-old with that going on. So I thought, yay, I get to earn my keep, and I get to grocery shop and cook, and, because being a 30-plus person, single person at the time, and I'm having to, mooch off friends, which they didn't look at it that way, but I felt guilty about it. So I was grateful to do that. And then another thing that was happening